Hey guys, I'm Deepthi Desikan, and in this video we're going to be talking about some makeup dupes. We're going to be finding out if some of these products are in fact dupes for the other or maybe alternatives, and sometimes even the dupes are way better than the high-end product itself in terms of price, in terms of the finish and everything. So that's what we're going to be talking about. When I say dupes, not a lot of times it's like sometimes shade dupe, sometimes formula dupe, sometimes they just happen to be very similar. So that's what I'm going to be talking about, and I will be mentioning and explaining in detail in this video. First up, for eyeshadow, I'm going to be talking about the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude eyeshadow palette. This is one of my absolute favorite eyeshadow palettes, and this is what I used on my eyes today as well. I used a combination of this shade, this shade in Heart on my crease, and then I blended it out with this shade called Juicy just to get it to look a little bit more cohesive. I used this shade in the outer corner, which is called Naughty, which is a really nice warm toned brown shade, and I used the shade called Spicy, which is more like a purplish burgundy kind of a shade, just to deepen out the outer corner. And that's what I have used. And for shimmer shade, I've used this shade called Tantric. It's a beautiful gold shade. It has that foil texture to it. It looks really nice on the eyes, and it just sparkles, and that's what I absolutely love about this eyeshadow palette. Now, for the longest time, I was trying to find something similar to this eyeshadow palette. Now, not a lot of eyeshadow palettes come close in terms of like the pop in the shimmer, to bring out that shimmer shade. It doesn't really stand out as much like the Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette. Not a lot of palettes do that. And also to get a similar color scheme was a little bit harder. But then when I was browsing through Amazon, I found this one. This is the Revolution Maxi Reloaded palette. This is what it looks like. Now let me give you guys a quick shade comparison of both. You do of course get a lot of different shades in the Makeup Revolution eyeshadow palette, and in this palette what I did today was I took this shade and used it in my crease, which looks very similar to the shade from the Huda Beauty palette. So this one is the Makeup Revolution one, this is the Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette. And then I did blend it out with this shade in my crease, which is again very similar to the Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette. This one is the Huda Beauty, this one is the Makeup Revolution one. And you can see it blends really well. It looks really nice and blended. The matte shades are again really pigmented. I didn't expect it to look as pigmented as this one was, but it was really turning out to be very beautiful. And then in the outer corner, what I did was I took this shade, this brown, which is very similar to the brown from the Huda Beauty eyeshadow palette. This one is the Huda Beauty one, the one in my middle finger, and this one is the Makeup Revolution one. The Huda Beauty one has a little bit more depth to it, and the Makeup Revolution is a little bit cool tone. Now, if you are talking about dupes, it can't be like identical in terms of shade, and I don't think this palette was even meant to be a dupe. I'm not very sure. So I took that shade, and then for my lid, I used this foily gold, which is just identical to the foily gold from Huda Beauty. This is the one from Huda Beauty, and this is Makeup Revolution, and you guys can see how it applies on my eye. It is beautiful, and the Huda Beauty one is a little bit more gold, and the Makeup Revolution one is a little bit lighter, but on the eyes they look beautiful. So what made me take up an eyeshadow palette like this as a dupe for the Huda Beauty one is because you can see this shade which has that little bit of a gradient. It's available even in this, and it's all very similar. So I will try inserting swatches of a couple of different shades. Not all of the shades are identical. I will tell you guys that there is a little bit of a tone shift, but I couldn't find any other eyeshadow palette that was of a similar color scheme for a really long time. I've been looking for it, and something I could find was from Makeup Revolution, and this is a brand that's known to dupe high-end palettes. For primer, I have my Huda Beauty Water Jelly Hydrating Primer. Now this is a really nice primer. It's a very hydrating primer. It has that gel-like consistency. It's very hydrating and lightweight on the skin. And I found something that is similar to this. I tried to find a lot of dupes from my collection, but I couldn't find something that was identical to this in terms of consistency. So the one that is closer to that is from Mars. This one is their Glow O'Clock Primer. Straight right off the bat, the consistency of the Mars primer is a lot different. It is a little bit more thicker than the Huda Beauty primer, but once you apply it on your skin, you can see that both of them have a really similar finish. And in fact, the Mars Glow O'Clock primer is a lot more dewy looking on the skin, and it has that sheen, and it also has a little bit of a tackiness which makes the makeup adhere onto it really well, and the makeup just lasts like that really well. And I feel like the hydrating effect of the Huda Beauty water jelly primer is not as good as the Mass Glow O'Clock primer. So the affordable one is way better than the high-end primer. In case you wanted to buy this because of my recommendations as well, you can switch and get the Glow O'Clock primer, which is just like less than half the price. And then another really popular dupe for this one, this is the Tatcha the Silk Canvas primer. This is a beautiful pore filling primer. It's very lightweight. This is something I can use all over my face as well. Usually a pore filling primer, I just concentrate it towards my T-zone, but this one I can pull it off using all over my face because of the consistency of it. It is so thin, so beautiful, and a dupe that is not just recommended by me, but a lot of people claim this one to be a dupe. This is the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. This one is very similar to the Tatcha primer, just that I feel like it's not as pore filling as my Tatcha primer is. And it also does leave a little bit of a tint on the skin, like sort of like a pinkish tint, and it is visible for quite some time, but it's not like it's interfering with any of the products. But this is a primer I usually concentrate just towards my T-zone, and I don't see it working for me for my entire face because it's a little bit on the thicker side, and I'm scared that it might, you know, ball up if I use any other product on top of it. But the Tatcha one is really good, but this is a really close dupe, and this is really pricey. Even the travel size of this is really pricey, so this one is affordable, and also you can get it on a discount most of the times. Next up, I was trying to find a dupe for this. This is the Glowish Huda Beauty Multi Dew Skin Tint. I don't really have anything quite exactly like this in my collection because this one has a very dewy finish. Not so much a dewy finish, somewhat like a shimmery finish. Like if you apply too much of this, you would end up looking like Tin Man because it is like luminous and it's like a lot of shimmer. So the one that is closest to this one is from Makeup Revolution. This one is the Super Dewy Skin Tint. I got this one in the shade Tan. The only problem for me with Makeup Revolution products is most of the products pull a lot pink on my skin, and I feel like they have a very stark pink undertone, which doesn't really work for someone like me. But apart from that, I feel like this has a beautiful dewy finish, and this can be a great alternative to the Glowish as well if you don't feel like you like that. You know, if you feel like this makes you look too sparkly, too artificial, you can try this out because this actually has a very subtle dewiness to it. Not something that is too dewy, not something I would recommend for people with very dry skin maybe, but it has a subtle amount of dewiness to it. And also the Huda Beauty Glowish has a little bit more coverage, like just half a pump will give you more coverage than the Makeup Revolution one, but the finish of this one is so much more skin-like. So these are some things I wanted to mention about these. And then another one I always wanted to compare is my Huda Beauty stick foundation. I always wanted to find a very similar dupe for this. This is a very good stick foundation. Most of Huda Beauty products do not lack coverage. They're very good in terms of coverage, and even this one. I just applied like 3 stripes on my face and I could get good medium coverage, very skin-like finish, something you can use for special occasions as well. And this is pricey, but you can always find this on a flat 50% off. But if you wanted something similar and from a more affordable brand, not very affordable, but I will tell you guys the price of this. This one is above 1,500, I think. This one is from Daily Life Forever 52. This is their stick foundation. I got this one in the shade Wheat. This has just 3 shades, and that is the case with most affordable stick foundations. They don't really have a very inclusive shade range. But this has that similar finish that I was looking for. Very similar to my Huda Beauty stick foundation. Again, in terms of coverage, you do need to apply quite a bit of this product to get it to medium coverage. Like first I applied around 4 stripes on my face. I didn't like the coverage, so I had to build on it a little bit more to get it to coverage of the Huda Beauty foundation. But once I applied it, I really liked the finish of both of this. It did have a subtle dewiness to it, which the Huda Beauty stick foundation also has. This one is a little bit more glowy. I'm not going to deny that, but I could find something that was closest. Not 100% match again, but closest. And I really like the finish of this. And I really like the finish of this as well. So if in case you were like wondering how the stick foundation is, if you should purchase it, you can. If you can find the Huda Beauty on good discount, then just stick to that. Another base product which I always mention is my Smashbox Tinted Moisturizer. I have this one in the shade Medium. I really like this. This is like a everyday product for me. It gives me really good light medium to somewhat medium coverage. It's what I have on this side of my face. I really like the shade match. I like the way it holds up. I like the way it looks on my skin, just like my skin but better. And I found like a similar match for that is from Faces Canada. This one is the 3-in-1 foundation, moisturizer, sunscreen, all day Hydra Matte foundation. This has that same finish, coverage and everything like the Smashbox tinted moisturizer has. In fact, I feel like this one is a little bit more dewy than the Smashbox tinted moisturizer on its own. So you do need similar amount of products and it gives you the same amount of coverage. It's what I have on this side of my face. So this side is Smashbox, this side is Faces, and I really like how both of these are faring, and this is really affordable and you can find this on discount most of the times in case you can't pick this one up. They do have a travel variant of this, but even that is quite expensive for the quantity you're getting, so you can try out the Faces Canada foundation. I'm not someone who's very impressed with Faces based products, and sometimes some launches just takes you by surprise, and this is one of that. The shade range on this is pretty good. They have 10 shades and not the most vast shade range, but it is pretty good compared to their previous launches. I have my Rare Beauty concealer. I have this one in the shade 320W, which is a pretty good match for me. So this is a concealer I am not decisive about. I don't really know if I really like it or I feel like it's not worth the price, because it feels nice and creamy underneath the eyes. It feels lightweight, but after a while it does cake up a little bit underneath the eyes, and it also does fade away from the inner corner of my eyes, and it's not the most long lasting concealer. And given the price, I was a tad bit disappointed with that. But I found something that is very similar to this. This is the Insight HD concealer. This concealer is like a dupe for a lot of different concealers I own, and this is, I feel like, very similar in terms of coverage of the Rare Beauty concealer. It gives you that similar coverage, similar finish, and even this can be drying if you have very dry under eye area, so just keep that in mind. But it works pretty well for me and it doesn't fade away that fast. So that's the reason I'm recommending this. And I've heard a lot of people like this. A lot of people don't like it at all. Again, products are very subjective. Makeup products, even what I really like, you might not really like. Now, the common complaint about this concealer is that it oxidizes a lot. And also shade match can be a little off, and maybe the way it wears underneath your eye. So straight up, if you have very dry skin, I would say skip on this one. And oxidizing, I don't find it to oxidize at all on my under eye area. So yeah, it's looking similar from the time I applied it. So it actually looks identical to the Rare Beauty concealer. And yeah, for loose powder, I have my Laura Mercier loose powder. This one is in the shade Translucent. This is a very raved after product. It's something I had for a long time and I haven't used it that much. So this loose powder, it's said to be translucent, but it has a subtle tint to it. I don't know how to explain it. It like has a little bit of like when you look at it straight up, it's not just white. It's not that stark white powder. It has a very finely milled texture, and it sits pretty well underneath my eyes. I feel like with certain concealers, it does look a lot more drying. I prefer my Huda Beauty loose powder over this any day. But this is a really nice loose powder, and there are a lot of loose powders that are very similar to this. There have been a lot of dupe videos as well. I've found this one, the Mars matte translucent powder, to be quite similar. Now this doesn't have that tint like I mentioned. It's like a little bit more stark white, and but the finish of this is just super lightweight. Like it's very finely milled. It feels like nothing on the eyes, and I usually prefer using the shade Banana, which is an even better match in my opinion. Let me just get it and show it to you guys. I really like to use the shade Banana underneath my eyes, and it's a very nice lightweight loose powder. This is the shade Banana from the Mars loose powder. It's a lot more like yellow, so compared to the Laura Mercier one, yeah, it is a little bit more yellow looking. This is what I prefer using underneath my eyes because I feel like it works really well with my skin tone, and there are chances of it not having a flashback. But I'll also give you guys a comparison of some other loose powders that I recommend, which can be close. The Mars translucent powder is a pretty good dupe. Like once you see me apply it on my under eye area, you can't really make out a difference as to which one is the Laura Mercier one, which one is the Mars translucent powder. I feel like with the Laura Mercier, you wouldn't have that much of a flashback. Now this one is the Insight Banana loose powder, which I feel like is very similar to the Laura Mercier loose powder. So this is the Laura Mercier loose powder. I'm going to just apply a thicker one of it. And this one is the inside banana loose powder. They are quite similar, and even the inside banana loose powder has a beautiful texture. It's very, very lightweight, and I absolutely love this one. I have used this one so much. I have recommended it quite a few times on my channel because I really, really like it. And also I saw another common comparison is the Maybelline Fit Me loose powder. I kind of disagree with this being a dupe because I feel like this is a little bit of a thicker powder for me, in my opinion. And also it has like a strong tint, because I have this one in the shade medium. It's a little bit dark and it works pretty well, like if you want to conceal, if you want to like add a little bit of coverage. So I have this one in the shade light medium actually. Maybe the shade light would match the Laura Mercier loose powder, I'm not very sure. But I feel like even in terms of consistency, this could be a little bit more drying and a little bit more thick underneath the eyes. So I don't find this one to be a dupe. However, you can try out the mask loose powders or the Insight loose powders. Both of these are really good, and they are quite comparable to a lot of high-end loose powders. And then for contour, I have my Huda Beauty Tantour in the shade medium. You know, I've talked about this quite a few times. It's a little bit of a darker contouring shade for me. Like, it's a little too dark for my skin tone, so I always make sure to use this before I use any other foundation or any other base product, because it's a little bit harder for me to blend once I have my foundation on. I would prefer getting a shade lighter than the shade medium, maybe the shade light, because of how dark and pigmented this one is. So there are not a lot of these kind of cream bronzers in the Indian market, so I try to figure out and find some. This one is from the brand called Real Woman. This one is their Bronze Balm. This is in the shade Shady. And this is a pretty affordable cream bronzer, and this is what it looks like. It's a little bit on the warmer side as compared to my Huda Beauty Tantour. It does pull a little orange on my skin, not going to deny that, but it's a lot more easier to blend. And in terms of like the way it looks on the skin, the blendability and everything, it's like the Huda Beauty Tantour, or in fact even a little better in terms of blendability. And it's not like, it is pigmented, but it's not like thick and too hard to blend. And another one which was a recent purchase, I got this Makeup Revolution cream bronzer in the shade medium. This is very, very cool toned compared to the Huda Beauty Tantour. It actually literally pulls gray on my skin. And it's something you can use to contour, and you can also use this even if you have your foundation on. It's not super pigmented, it's creamy, it's blendable, but it's not quite similar to the Huda Beauty Tantour in terms of the consistency, the way it applies on the skin, or even the pigmentation of it. But it's a very blendable product and a great alternative. And another one which I have had in my collection for quite a bit, this one is the Laura Mercier Candle Glow Sheer Perfecting Powder. This is like a finishing powder, and this has a very subtle glow to it, and it's not something that translates as much onto your skin, but it does make the finish of the foundation look a little bit better. Is it worth the price? I don't quite think so, because it's really pricey and it doesn't really alter anything that much. And something that is similar to that is the Flower Beauty Light Illusion Perfecting Powder. I feel like the finish of it and everything is very, very similar to this. It doesn't have that radiance that the Laura Mercier powder has, but like I mentioned, once you apply it on the skin, it doesn't even like show you that radiance anymore, and it doesn't like add that glow onto your skin. So this one comes very similar to this. And then for blush, I have a super popular one. This one is the Rare Beauty blush in the shade Believe. It's a beautiful blush. It's what I have on my face right now as well. It's super pigmented and it's very blendable. Like, you have to use very little amount of it and you can get it to blend, and it has a dewy finish to it, and it's very long lasting. And I found something that is quite similar even in terms of like shade. The Rare Beauty one is a little bit more pink, and this is the Makeup Revolution blush in the shade Rose Lust, which is a little bit more mauve toned purple. And once you blend it out, they look quite similar on the skin, and I feel like they are like similar, like, you know, liquid blushes and all of that. I feel like the Makeup Revolution one is not as pigmented as Rare Beauty. You have to apply it maybe twice to get it to the pigmentation of the Rare Beauty one, and also it's not very, very long lasting, but it looks nice and dewy on the skin, and it's also a very blendable product, and it's again very affordable compared to the Rare Beauty blush, and it also is easily available in India. So you can definitely look into this. And then for mascara, I don't know if I've already mentioned this. This is the Too Faced Damn Girl Mascara. It is a really nice mascara. It is quite volumizing, has a decent amount of length, and it's what I have on this side of my eyes. And a similar dupe for that is from Maybelline. This one is the Falsies Lash Lift Mascara. I feel like even the wand is quite similar. The way it looks, you know, the eyes, everything, it looks very similar. So this is the wand of the Damn Girl Mascara. And this is the Maybelline mascara, quite similar, and there's more ease of application with the Maybelline mascara itself, and because it's a little bit more slender and also longer, the wand is a little bit longer. So yeah, you can save your money and just get the Maybelline one, and I'm sure most of you guys already have it. And last but not the least, for the lips, I have Huda Beauty Liquid Matte Lipstick in the shade Trendsetter. This is the newer launch, you know, after the reformulation, and there's a little bit of a shade difference from the previous Trendsetter. So I decided to get this, and the identical match for this is from Kiro. This one is in the shade Cinnamon Nude. You guys can see from the swatch, it's very, very like similar. And the previous Trendsetter had a little bit of a warmth to it, so Cinnamon Nude was not 100% match, but with the reformulation and the shade change, this is 100% match to Trendsetter. So in case you wanted to pick that up and it's too pricey, just stick to Cinnamon Nude. And I really like the formula of Cinnamon Nude. It's very, very lightweight, pigmented, long lasting, doesn't dry your lips out. So yeah, save your money. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up, and also subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell so that you're notified every time I upload a new video. And I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.